Laughter split the hush like a crack in marble. Not a nervous chuckle or a child's mistake. This was sharp, jeering, the kind of sound that doesn't belong anywhere near the tomb. Boots kept striking stone in answer. Thud, thud, thud. 21 steps. Pivot, the rifle a line of light in the dying sun, the brim of the hat cutting the guard's eyes to iron. Flags snapped in the wind. The cool Virginia air smelled of autumn leaves and faint gun oil. The crowd stiffened, hands drifting to hearts, as if instinct alone could mend what the laugh had broken. Silence is the first language here. It is where the living come to listen to the dead. Break it, and the dead are louder. He stood a mat's width from eternity, uniform crisp enough to cut skin, buttons bright as stars. Beyond him, rows of white headstones rolled like surf into mist, each name a door. The evening light turned the tomb to gold. The velvet rope at the edge of the plaza felt rough under watching fingers, a reminder. Some lines are meant for reverence, not crossing. "Hey, robot!" a voice rang out, swollen with its own echo. 20 years and not one word? Must be nice. Walk, turn, pretend. A few in the crowd flinched. A woman whispered, "Please, stop." A child asked, small and bewildered, "Why is he yelling at the soldier?" No one answered. The smell of wet grass drifted up from the lawn, mixing with the cold polish of marble. The murmur of visitors dropped to nothing as the guard pivoted, face carved of obedience, rifle gleaming like a held-back thunderbolt. The heckler swaggered closer to the rope, pamphlet crumpling in his fist. "Say something, anything, prove you're human." He laughed again, ugly and sure of itself. "Or is the statue only for show?" From a wheelchair near the front, a veteran's voice cut low, raw gravel. "Respect the dead." The heckler smirked without looking. "I respect what I can see. You are looking at it," the veteran said. He lifted a folded flag to his chest, edges rough like velvet against his fingers. The cloth had once covered a coffin. It had weight. Boots answered for the guard, steady, measured, the stone underfoot hard and slick from a day of footsteps. He did not break stride. He did not look left or right. The crowd could feel the discipline like temperature, a climate of duty. He carried it in the rigid line of his shoulders, in the exact angle of the rifle sling, in the breath he kept invisible. "Speak up," the heckler barked, emboldened by the absence of consequence. 20 years too proud to open your mouth? What's the point? You think any of them—" He jerked a thumb at the headstones. "Care what you do with your feet?" A thin sound rose. Someone sobbing and trying not to. A hand squeezed another at the rope line. A camera phone lowered. The sun slid behind a cloud, and the light thinned to pewter, turning the tomb into a white flame under the dark. The guard's pivot cut the air. Click, crack. Steel whispered along leather. The tiny mechanics of duty sounded enormous here. The heckler flinched, then swelled bigger to hide it. "Yeah, that's right. Look my way." The guard did not look his way. He looked nowhere. He looked into the vow itself. A voice from the back, quiet, firm. "This is hallowed ground." It carried without effort, as if the stones themselves helped push it forward. The air tightened. The smell of rain hovered far off, a clean edge ready to erase the day. The heckler held up his pamphlet, crumpled it tighter and tossed it. The wad hit the marble by the guard's boot and skidded to a stop. Scritch. The sound was small, indecent, like a fingernail on a coffin lid. The veteran lifted his chin, eyes bright with pain. "You don't know what silence costs, son." "Costs?" The heckler laughed again. "He's paid to march." He pressed his fingers into the rope, feeling its snap bite his skin. "I could do that job in my sleep." "Then you don't know what it is," the veteran said. The guard came down the line, a metronome of reverence, boots, stone, breath, thud, thud, thud. He turned, perfect, rifle drawing a white line through the dim. For a moment, all time met in one frame, the guard in silhouette, the tomb behind him blazing, the crowd holding its breath, the headstones in their patient ranks, the flag tight in the veteran's hands. Legendary. If a poster could speak, it would show this. The soldier like a blade of light, the world around him folding into silence. The heckler swallowed barely. "You hear me? Say one word." He did not understand that the one word he wanted was the one word, but the guard would not spend lightly. In 20 years the guard had said many things, none of them out loud. He had spoken with his shoes and his rifle and his stillness. He had told every grave, "I am here." He had told every visitor, "So are they." The wind shifted. Flags snapped brighter, as if the cemetery inhaled together. Cool air licked across the plaza, lifting the ends of the rope, brushing the cheeks of the front row, like the hands of unseen friends. The marble skin felt colder under the soles of 100 watching shoes. The heckler jutted his chin. "Yeah, thought so." He took half a step, toes brushing the boundary, a small trespass that felt immense. "I'll show you how easy it is." "Don't," the veteran said. 2 letters. Centuries heavy. The guard's next step landed with a depth no physics could explain. Thud. It felt in the bones like a distant gun salute. He advanced precisely to his mark, halted, and the plaza seemed to tilt toward him the way a field leans toward a storm. He paused. The world paused with him. Even the birds in the trees went quiet, as if the branches themselves remembered. The heckler waited for the rhythm to start again, the comfort of predictability, the proof that nothing had changed. He wanted the machine to keep moving so he could prove it was only gears. The guard did not move. A beat stretched, another. The cadence broke. In 20 years he had never offered the crowd that kind of stillness. The break itself became a sound. The crowd inhaled. Someone whispered a prayer. The child pressed his face to his mother's coat and felt her heart thudding fast. On the marble, the crumpled pamphlet trembled in a small patch of wind and stopped at the guard's toe, like a dare that had run out of courage. The brim lifted a degree, not enough to show eyes, only enough to say he was not a statue at all, but a man with a will that could cut. The heckler's mouth opened for another joke. Nothing came out. And with the sun guttering at the edge of day and the tomb burning white behind him, the guard held still, utterly still, and the cemetery felt the weight shift. He had halted. The watch had changed. The silence leaned forward. Floodlights flickered on across the plaza, throwing long shadows against the tomb as twilight deepened into night. The marble glowed pale, a beacon under a darkening sky. Mist rose from the grass like breath, curling around the velvet ropes, clinging to shoes and ankles. The crowd had grown quieter still, unsettled by what they had just seen, the guard's cadence broken, his silence sharpened into something new. The heckler leaned on the ropes, smirking, but his voice chorus had an edge of nerves now. "That's it? You stop walking? That's your big trick?" He spread his arms to the crowd. "Statue man won't even blink." The veteran in the wheelchair spoke again, his voice steady despite the tremor of age. "Boy, I told you once. Show respect." His hand rested on the folded flag in his lap, its cloth rough and worn from years of holding. He looked up at the tomb as though speaking not just to the living, but to those resting beyond. The heckler snorted. "Respect what? A tourist show? He's no soldier. He's a mannequin in uniform." The words struck like blows, each one heavier than the last. The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers rising and falling. The smell of rain pressed closer, mingling with the faint tang of gun oil that drifted from the guard's rifle. The guard's silence thickened. Then, click. The sharp metallic slide of his bolt shifted. A sound small in any other place, but here it rang like thunder. Veterans in the crowd stiffened instinctively, old muscles remembering. A mother pressed her son's head into her side, whispering, "Quiet now, quiet." The heckler laughed, covering his unease. "Oh, he moves the toy parts. Maybe next he'll speak? No? You got nothing?" He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded pamphlet from the visitor's stand. He balled it tight in his fist, paper crinkling like brittle leaves. The veteran's voice sharpened. "Don't do it." But the heckler grinned. eyes fixed on the guard. 20 years and not one word. Let's see if this wakes you up. He tossed the crumpled pamphlet at the guard's boots. It struck the marble with a soft slap, then skittered against the stone. Scritch. The sound grated like fingernails on a coffin lid. The crowd gasped. A woman's sob cracked through the hush. A man muttered, "God forgive him." The guard pivoted. His boots struck the marble in a single, punishing echo. Thud. Floodlight caught the steel of his bayonet, lightning flickering on the horizon as though sky itself prepared to witness. The heckler smirked wider, emboldened by his own defiance. "That's right. I got your attention." He leaned farther over the rope, sneering inches closer to the sacred ground. The veteran whispered, trembling, "You've signed your own fate." Legendary stillness fell. The guard stood in profile, rifle angled like a blade across his chest, white marble glowing behind him. His eyes, shadowed beneath the brim, fixed forward but radiated presence so sharp it pressed the heckler back without a touch. And then thunder rolled across the sky, long and low, as if the earth itself had spoken in warning. The heckler laughed, too loud, trying to smother his unease. "Go on then, say something. Show us all what 20 years of silence is worth." The veteran closed his eyes. "You're about to learn." The wind rose, the rope swayed, the guard's boots shifted, one precise step forward. The crowd gasped as the silence bent toward breaking. Night pressed down hard, the sky boiling black above Arlington. The first drops of rain splattered against the marble, spreading dark stains that gleamed under the floodlights. Flags whipped violently in the wind, their edges cracking like whips. The crowd huddled close beneath umbrellas, yet no one moved to leave. Something deeper than weather held them rooted, the sense that history was bending. The heckler's smirk faltered, though he forced his laugh louder. "What's one step? You gonna dance for us now?" His voice broke at the edges. The guard moved again. Boot slammed against marble. Thud. The sound ricocheted across the plaza like a drumbeat before battle. The guard stepped off the mat. A line sacred for generations, abandoned only in moments of emergency. 20 years of silence, and now the step that shattered it. The crowd gasped as one, the breath sucked from every chest. A veteran's wife clutched her husband's arm, whispering, "He left the line." The veteran in the wheelchair bowed his head, voice trembling but sure. "It has begun." The heckler stumbled back half a step, hand dropping from the rope. The rain came harder, beading on his jacket, plastering his hair to his forehead. He barked to cover his fear. "Yeah, come on, break your little march. Do something real for once." Lightning split the sky, throwing the guard into silhouette. Rifle angled across his chest, bayonet flashing silver, eyes shadowed but unblinking. The floodlight carved his figure into something more than flesh, a monument moving with the certainty of eternity. The air tasted of iron, gun oil and storm mixing sharp at the back of every throat. The crowd's shoes slipped on wet marble as they shifted, pressing back from the invisible weight pressing forward. The guard advanced with the slow precision of a verdict. Each bootfall hammered stone. Thud, thud, thud. Water splashed high, droplets sparkling in the glare. His rifle stayed level, hand steady, uniform soaked but unyielding. The heckler raised his hands as if to steady himself, but his voice cracked in false bravado. "What? You gonna scare me with silence? You gonna stare me to death?" The guard halted 1 arm's length from him. Rain streamed from his brim, sliding in rivulets down his jaw. He had not spoken a word in 2 decades. His voice was a sealed vault, a promise made long ago. But tonight the lock trembled. The veteran gripped his flag tighter, whispering, 20 years for this moment. The guard drew breath. The storm seemed to hush, thunder waiting. When his voice came, it was raw stone breaking open deep and terrible, carrying the weight of every grave around him. "Stand! Down!" The words detonated across the plaza. The crowd gasped, some crying out. Even the heckler flinched, the sound stripping the arrogance from his face. 2 words, but they carried the echo of 20 years. the fury of silence sharpened into a blade. Lightning exploded overhead, bathing the guard in white fire, his rifle glinting like judgment. For the first time in decades, he had spoken, and the silence afterward was heavier than before. The heckler's laugh died in his throat. He staggered back, mouth opening and closing with no sound. The guard did not move again. His command hung in the air, absolute, undeniable. Midnight storm. The plaza shivered under sheets of rain, marble slick as glass, floodlights painting the tomb in pale fire. The crowd had thinned but not vanished. Those who remained huddled beneath dripping umbrellas, eyes wide, breath held. They had witnessed what no one expected. After 20 years of silence, the guard had spoken. 2 words only, but they had cracked the night wide open. The heckler, drenched and pale, staggered back a step, then forced himself forward again. His voice shook, but he forced it loud, brittle with fear. "That's it? That's all you got? 2 words?" He jabbed a finger at the guard. "Why now? Huh? Why break 20 years of silence? What makes me so special?" His laughter came thin, desperate, swallowed quickly by thunder. The veteran's voice rose from his chair, hoarse but firm. "Stop, son. You're asking for what you can't carry." His hands shook around the folded flag pressed to his chest. Rain soaked the cloth, but he clutched it tighter, as if it held the heat of every grave. The heckler turned on him, snarling. "No, I want to hear it. Let him explain. He's wasted his life walking circles, saying nothing, pretending he's some holy statue. 20 years. Why not speak?" The guard took a single step forward. Thud. Boots struck stone like the tolling of a bell. The storm seemed to pause around it. He stood tall, rifle across his chest, rain pouring down his face and uniform. His silence pressed heavier than any word could. The heckler's voice cracked. "Say it! Tell us why!" Lightning flared. In the blinding white, the guard lifted his chin, and then he broke the vault again. His voice was deep, raw, not a shout, but heavier than thunder. "Because silence is their language." The words rolled across the marble, echoed in the mist, filled the hollow spaces between the graves. The crowd froze. The heckler blinked, his bravado shrinking. The guard's voice carried on, each word like a bayonet driven into stone. "Every unknown beneath this ground speaks in silence. I have carried it for them, every step, every hour, 20 years. His jaw tightened, rain coursing down like tears he would not show. "I do not speak, because I speak for the dead." The veteran bowed his head, his own tears spilling freely now. "God bless you, soldier," he whispered. The heckler's lips trembled. He tried to laugh, but the sound died in his throat. His hands shook at his sides, empty of excuses. The guard stood unmoving, words lingering in the storm, reverberating in marrow and stone alike. His presence was no longer ceremony, it was revelation. The legendary image seared itself into memory. The guard, drenched in midnight rain, bayonet glinting, eyes blazing beneath the brim, his voice echoing like scripture across the tomb. Behind him the marble glowed, eternal and untouchable. Before him the heckler faltered, arrogance shattered. Thunder rolled again, but softer now, as if the storm itself bent to the weight of truth. The guard fell silent once more. His head bowed slightly, and he returned to stillness. The plaza breathed with him. The heckler's knees buckled. He collapsed against the rope, clutching it as if it might anchor him. His face crumpled. For the first time, he had nothing to say. And then the guard's voice came once more, final and low, cutting the air clean. "You laugh because you carry nothing. I walk because I carry them all." The words struck like canis, non-fire. The crowd gasped, some weeping openly, some saluting in the storm. The heckler's face broke entirely, shame drowning his eyes. Dawn bled slowly into Arlington, turning the storm's wreckage into something holy. Clouds broke apart, pale fire spilling through, and the cemetery seemed to rise in the light. Every headstone glistened with rain, each one a lantern for the names carved into its face. Mist curled off the marble plaza like smoke from an altar, and in the middle of it all stood the guard, unchanged, unbroken, eternal. The heckler crouched at the rope line, drenched and trembling. His arrogance had dissolved into silence. His lips moved, but no sound came. The crowd that had endured the night no longer looked at him, their eyes fixed on the man who had carried silence for 20 years and broken it only for truth. Mothers held children tighter, veterans saluted through tears, strangers bowed their heads as if a church bell had rung. The veteran in the wheelchair sat straighter, his folded flag pressed against his chest, damp but warm from his trembling hands. His voice rose, hoarse but strong, carried by the morning air. For 2 decades, he gave his voice to the dead. You mocked him, but he answered for every man who could not. The guard did not respond. His jaw was set, his eyes steady beneath the brim, darkened by rain. He shifted only once, adjusting the rifle across his chest with ritual precision, as if sealing the vow he had carried for half his life. Sunlight poured through the last storm cloud, striking the tomb until it blazed white, words etched sharper than ever. Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God. The crowd hushed as the marble caught fire in the light. It was as though heaven itself leaned low to bear witness. The heckler raised his face, shame pooling in his eyes. I didn't know, he muttered, voice cracking. I thought it was a show. The guard turned his head, slow, deliberate. His gaze fell heavy as stone upon the man. Silence weighed for a heartbeat, then broke into words that had waited 20 years to be spoken aloud. The living can laugh, the dead cannot. That is why I walk. The sentence rolled across the plaza like a final volley, steady, devastating, unforgettable. The crowd broke into quiet sobs, some whispering prayers, others saluting with trembling hands. The veteran pressed his flag to his lips, whispering, Amen. The heckler lowered his face into his hands, his body racked with shame. He said nothing more. The guard, having said all he would ever say, turned back to the black mat. His boots struck marble once more, thud, 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 resuming the cadence the world had learned to revere. 21 steps, turn, 21 steps again. The eternal march. The eternal silence. And there was the final legendary image. The guard striding through steam rising off rain-slick marble, rifle gleaming, sun crowning the tomb in fire, the crowd on their knees, and the heckler bowed low in silence. The voiceover closed, low, solemn, carved into memory. One word can shake a man. A sentence can humble a crowd. But silence, silence carried for 20 years, can speak louder than thunder. The guard marched on. The watch continued. If this story moved you, let it remind you that silence is not emptiness. It is sacrifice carried by those who stand watch for the fallen. Share this story so others remember the cost of freedom. Subscribe and join us in honoring those who gave their voices, their names, and their lives so that we may live. Respect is not optional. At the tomb and in our lives, it is owed.